Welcome to another episode of Pirkei Avot. We are now on Mishna 16, and we dedicate this episode to Levy ben Moshe Esther and Elisheva ben Levy, and also my father, Alav Shalom, Yehuda ben Moshe Esther. Okay, Mishnah 16, take it away, Michael.
Thank you. So, in this Mishnah, we introduces Rabban Gamliel Hazokein. He was the grandson of Hillel. His father was a Shimon, but he is not mentioned in the Mishnah. But he was obviously his tutor. He taught Rabban Gamliel. He passed on the Masorah, was passed on through him. But let's go through let's read the Mishnah first. So it says, Rabban Gamliel haya omer. Rabban Gamliel used to say, Asay lecha rav, appoint for yourself a teacher. V'histalek min hasofek, and avoid doubt. V'al tarbe le'aser omadot, and do not make a habit of tithing by guesswork. So this is two things before we start. It's unusual. Let's talk a little bit about Rabban Gamliel. He was the grandson of Hillel, and I believe his son was also called Shimon ben Gamliel. But we're dealing with Rabban Gamliel, who was Hillel's son was Shimon, and Shimon's son was this Rabban Gamliel, Hazokein. So, usually we start off these Pirkei Avot Mishnahs by the phrase Kibel mer. So Rabban Gamliel Kibel HaTorah min so and so, like that Rabban Gamliel received the Torah from so and so, and he transferred it, and he said so and so. Then he'll give his quote. But in this Mishnah, we find that it only says Rabban Gamliel haya omer, aseh lecha rav, etc. So this stirred a little bit of thought into, or not controversy, but it's commented on. It's important. So why would it not mention the Shimon, who taught him what he knew? So Tosfot Yom Tov gives a commentary. He says Rabban Gamliel said, commented on that, saying he was the grandson of Hillel, as the Talmud says in Shabbat Daf 15 Omad Aleph. Hillel, Shimon, Gamliel, and Shimon were the Nesiim for the last 100 years that the second temple stood. The commentators explain that the reason the Mishnah no longer introduces each Tana with the phrase he received the tradition from so-and-so is that starting from the students of Hillel and Shammai, numerous unresolved legal disputes arose in Israel, and the Torah became as two Torahs. It is therefore no longer possible to say they received the Torah, because the Torah of each sage could no longer be said to have been a definite received and transmitted, as there were two versions, so to speak, as was the Torah of earlier sages. But I feel that for this reason alone, the Tana would not have rejected the term received, for they did indeed receive the main foundation of the Torah, where there was no disagreement whatsoever, as Rambam writes at length in the introduction to his commentary on the Mishnah. And in point of fact, the question is moot, because in 2:8 the Mishnah says Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai received the tradition from Hillel and Shammai. So there is this concept that is raised by Tosfot Yom Tov about if there were two houses of study, Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, how could it be one Masorah if they both didn't agree? But as from what I understand, what I've learned is that a good analogy is if you create a Venn diagram of the disagreements and agreements between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, they would almost perfectly overlap. Although they did disagree, they agreed far more often. And it's not correct to say, look, they worked things out differently. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel were so at odds that you can't say that Gamliel received the whole Torah, because it's debatable which is considered the true Masorah.
Also, Hillel and Shammai themselves, obviously, we talk about before Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, but the individuals themselves, Hillel and Shammai, only disagreed on 3 points, which is incredible, because the Gemara is replete with so many machlokot between Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. But they themselves, because they were that much before Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, they were, I suppose, closer to the Masorah from Sinai, and it was only those three occasions that they disagreed.
And on this subject, before we get into the main tachlis of the Mishnah, the Rashbat in Tiferet Yisrael, they also gives a commentary why his ancestors were not mentioned as the transmitters to him. He says anybody who leaves a son and he turns out to be like the father, it is as if the father never died. If a son learns with his father and he transmits what he learned from the father, it is as if the father is still alive. And in this case, it is self-evident that they received it from his father. And this actual, even though this is kind of a phrase has been omitted, this is deemed to be the highest form of Masorah, when a father teaches his son and the son transmits this information. I give it an analogy of the Torah is the train and the children are just laying down new train tracks. So now if we start the Mishnah, let's look at what Rambam talks about Aseh Lecha Rav. So Rambam says, Rabban Gamliel says, make for yourself a mentor, remove yourself from doubt, and do not frequently tithe by estimation. So he says, that which he commanded here to make a mentor is not regarding study, but rather legal decisions. Place yourself a mentor that you can rely upon in the forbidden and the permissible, and that you can remove yourself from doubt. So it's very interesting. Rambam says here, he's not saying appoint yourself. Well, we've heard earlier on in another Pirkei Avot Mishnah about Aseh Lecha Rav, but here Rambam suggests that it's more a technical advice. So, for example, you may be very, very knowledgeable in many, many areas of life, like politics, like economics, and various other things. But if you want to get your accounts done, you go and see your accountant. Yeah. He may not know much about what's going on in the world, but trust me, he knows how to do your accounts better than you could ever do. So you must look for, he's saying this is not regarding study, but rather legal decisions. So if you are a rabbi, is supposed to be very well-rounded, and he may have to deal with cases that don't involve only Torah. They may involve health or something, and you should therefore try and gain as many rabbonim as possible in order to have a basic understanding from many experts as to what is the best advice to give. So, and Rambam continues. And you should remove from yourself doubt, as it is said in Talmud Yerushalmi Moed Katan, chapter 1, Mishnah 10, go and bring me an elder from the marketplace, and I will rely upon him and permit it to you. And so too did he command to flee from putting out tithes by estimation, because it is from the doubts. So he's saying that in cases regarding cattle or other mechanics of the marketplace, it's better to bring in a market trader or someone who works in the market to give you advice. You, the Rav, should seek advice from people who are experts in their field. This is what Rambam is saying.
It's like the Irish farmer who was outstanding in his field.
Very good. So what does Bartanura say about Aseh L'chorav? He says, it is now speaking concerning the matter of jurisdiction, like Rambam said. If a case comes in front of you and you are in doubt about it, make for yourself a mentor and remove yourself from doubt. Don't be, I'm adding in here, don't try and think that you're a know-all and you know everything. You may be very intelligent, but that doesn't mean you're very experienced in all aspects of life. So, and Bartanura continues, and do not decide upon it by yourself, as it was with Rava, when a possibly unfit animal was brought to him. He would gather all of the slaughterers of Mata Machshia, and he would say, so that we will only receive a chip of the beam.
Yes. Mata Machshia.
So, and what does Rabbeinu Yonah say about this make for yourself Aseh L'chorav? He means to say that he should take his colleague as his mentor, even though he is not more wise than he, and even if he has not even reached the first ones, his wisdom, in order that he should remove himself from doubt. This is technical doubt. And he also mentions the Yerushalmi Moed Katan, bring me an elder from the marketplace, as it said previously. And he continues, as there are times when the sage will be in doubt about a ruling and he will not know what to do, say if he permits, maybe it is forbidden, and if a mishap will occur through him, and if he forbids what is permitted, it will come out that he will cause a loss of money to Yisrael, whereas the Torah is concerned about it. Therefore, he should make his colleague a mentor and ask him about questions, and he will make the ruling upon his mouth, even if the matter is simple to him, and even if it is a permissive ruling, even when he is not as great as he in wisdom. And thus did the Gaonim say, if anything where it is doubt to one and clear to the other, the law is like the one to whom it is clear, even if it is a student before his mentor.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. Midrash Shmuel says something different. He says, when it says Aseh L'chorav, make yourself a teacher, it means find a teacher who is greater than you in intellect, chokhmah, because when you submit yourself to him, you'll feel comfortable. If you're pointing at somebody as a mentor who's your equal, your peer, let's say, it might not be easy to submit yourself to him, but when it's somebody who's far above you in terms of chokhmah, then it will be very easy for you to submit to him because of obviously his towering intelligence.
Yes.
And his experience.
Yes. And now we'll deal with the last section of the Mishnah. Va'al tarbela aseh amadot, and do not make a habit of tithing by guesswork. What does Bartanura says? Bartanura says, as the one who separates his tithes by estimation is not spared from disarray. If he reduces from what needs to be given, his tithes are made adequate, but his fruit are disarrayed. If he adds upon what is fitting to give, his fruits are rendered adequate and his tithes are disarrayed. And Rabbeinu Yonah says about this, do not estimate your tithes, that he did not tithe his fruits by estimation. If he wants to tithe what he has measured out generously to be more than a tenth, it comes out that which is beyond the tenth is still a tevel, a forbidden mixture that requires separation to render it permissible. That is not tithed until he puts his eyes to it and to tithe it, and it comes out that there is a corruption of this tithe. And this matter is a metaphor for the matter of reasoning, in which a person should not do it by estimation, but rather in a way of principles and to come to full knowledge. So he's combining all of these aspects and making it one solid rule. And this is not the case with all reasonings, as there is one that is nuanced, and the sage, even though his reasoning leans to the side that he understands, recognizes that another sage can see it in a different way. It is just that his way looks more correct in his eyes. And there is another reasoning that the sage innovates and recognizes and knows that it is logically correct and necessary, that has other angles, and that no other sage would disagree. And the one who understands will understand this. And for this reason was this matter made adjacent to the teaching, as he says, make for yourself a mentor, remove yourself from doubt. And the two teachings are based on almost the same rationale.
Wow, that's interesting, because Ruach Chaim, which is Rav Chaim Volozhin, says a very similar thing, because if you think you're going to be, instead of calculating exactly what your tithing is, you can just say, well, it's about this, and I'll give a bit more. It says you think, well, I'm just erring on the side of caution. I don't want to give less. I don't want to give the same. I'll give a bit more, so I know that definitely, But that is connected with accepting a teacher on yourself, because you shouldn't think that you can just estimate and make your own decision there, because you need guidance. You need somebody to help you work out what the Torah is requires from you. You require to give that 10%. You have to invest the time and the effort into, because it's not just the giving of the money. You can just say, look, I'm rich man, let me just give, let me give
20%.
20%, 40%, whatever. But that's not, the Torah wants you to work it out. The Torah wants you to go by the guidelines of the Torah. So that's where the teacher comes in to show you, this is what I have to do. These are your disbursements. This is what you've had as a gross income. Work out your profit. Take the 10% as accurate. Maybe then, once you've worked it out, then you can say, well, I'd like to give a bit more. But it's the working out. That's the essence of the mitzvah. So, very good, Michael. Thank you so much for that. Next week we're going to move, Bezrat Hashem, next time rather, we're going to move on to Mishna 17 as we hurtle towards the end of the Perek. I'm very excited to get to that point. Thank you so much, and we'll see you, Bezrat Hashem, next time.